So when Jeff tried to save the world, and you might go into that thinking like, oh, is this like an end of the world, a disaster movie? No. You feel like maybe it is a disaster movie, right? When Jeff tried to save the world. But the reality is that for most of us, the world ending wouldn't be the world ending. It would be losing something that is very familiar to us, that means the most to us. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Everyman Movie Review. After being super existential in our last episode, I thought I would go to something way more plain, way more, not boring, kind of an exciting movie, but way more regular in this week's offering. So, this week we're going to be talking about When Jeff Tried to Save the World, which I felt was just, well, you'll hear more from me towards the end of the review. But this is a movie about a guy who works in a bowling alley. And what we learn as the movie goes along is that he was in college, he had all kinds of potential, he was on track to make millions and do big things with his life. And then, at some point, he started lying to his family about what he was doing and really just dropped everything, and went to work at Winky's World, which was a bowling alley in a neighborhood in Chicago. And having lied to them for so long, you may know that these things just take on a life of their own. Once you lie, and then you stick to the lie, you always have to stick to the lie. But we see a day in the life of Jeff, and things are only interrupted when his sister, who's now in medical school, driven by the tales of her amazing brother, decides to take a weekend and come visit him, which could upend everything. But before we get too far into the movie, let's get through the pleasantries, shall we? When Jeff Tried to Save the World, hereafter probably Jeff or something like that, was directed by Kendall Goldberg. It was also written by Kendall Goldberg and Rachel Borgo. It is starring Maya Erskine as Samantha, Jon Heder as Jeff, and Jon Heder. Didn't recognize him from the poster, realized, oh, that's Napoleon Dynamite, and then was blown away because he is actually a really good actor, not just as Napoleon Dynamite. So there's that. Anna Konkle as Lindy, and you may know her as the actress from the Pen 15 Club, along with Maya Erskine. Brendan Meyer as Stanford, Jon Heder as Carl, and playing a character way different than you saw him on Park and Recreation, that is for sure. Steve Berg as Frank, Candy Milo as Sheila, and Robert Bruller as El Diablo. We'll get into that name later too. So when Jeff tried to save the world, and you might go into that thinking like, oh, is this like an end of the world, a disaster movie? No. And I really loved the way that this was kind of put out on the streaming services, because it was like, you feel like maybe it is a disaster movie, right? When Jeff Tried to Save the World. But the reality is that for most of us, the world ending wouldn't be the world ending. It would be losing something that is very familiar to us, that means the most to us. And for Jeff, the thing that means the most to him is Winky's World. He gave up the life that he looked like he was going to have with the riches and the great job and doing big things, and became manager at Winky's World, a small bowling alley in Chicago. And then the owner announces that they're going to close Winky's World. Sheila and her husband, Carl, are getting divorced. They got divorced. The divorce is finalized now. And Carl is getting Winky's World. And he's going to close it and sell it to someone else to open up something else there. And Sheila is Jeff's boss, Jon Heder's boss, and she is a really fantastic woman. You feel like she's somebody who, one of those people who's been married a long time and then finally realized that, like, I can't hold on to this anymore, not for anything, so I gotta let it go, and then loses the thing that she's invested so much in, Winky's World, and has kind of given up. And Carl, Jon Heder, is an asshole. Not really. I mean, he is in so much as we see kind of all parts of him, and he is kind of an asshole, but I feel like if I knew these people in real life, if I was a friend of both of theirs, I would be like, well, I mean, like, Carl's got to do what he's got to do. I get it, Sheila's upset, but, like, I mean, the man's sitting on some property that's worth millions, and it's a bowling alley that doesn't make any money. So, if people came out and bowled, I would say keep it, but it's not worth it. So, like, I see both sides, but obviously, since we are on Jon Heder's, or Jeff's perspective and Sheila's perspective, he looks like a really bad guy. And from that, it makes him seem way different than his character from Parks and Recreation. But Jeff has an idea. he is going to save Winky's World. Now, the way to do that is to make it profitable, because if Carl sees that it's profitable again, then maybe he won't sell. Maybe he'll decide to keep it. And so he jumps in for the first time with some zazz about his job. He, instead of just kind of going through the motions, and they do such an amazing job at the beginning of this movie, just showing him going through the motions of his day. And I have to say, after having lived many lives, I'm on my fourth reiteration of a life really now, there is something so calming about just the mundane daily life that you can find. The job I have now didn't start as that job. I started working an entry-level job at that company. And I started that job after leaving the law practice, where I was like, you know what? I just need something that is easy, day-to-day, I don't have to think about, and I found it. But as these things happen, I was added challenges and given things to do and showed myself to be, more qualified, I guess. And within a few months, I'd risen up the ranks, and then I was the boss, and now I'm still the boss there. So it's one of those weird things that, like, when put to the test, you really do see those that have those kind of qualifications, those potential. And this is the moment. Jeff knows that he is that guy, and he is being called upon, and now he needs to show up. So he decides to. But maybe it's a little too late, because no matter what he does, he can't seem to get people into Winky's World. Even his video game, which, by the way, he creates a console game based around the bowling alley theme, which is amazing. And into this, we throw the fact that his sister, who is in medical school, has decided to jump out for a weekend and come visit him because her roommate's family is having a wedding nearby. So they're going to crash with him for a few days, go to the wedding, and then come back and then leave. But he doesn't want everyone to know that he's been lying about his job and his place of living and all of that. And she just kind of shows up. So it's like, oh, all right, I guess I got to hide things. Like, she doesn't know he works at a bowling alley. Winky's World sounds like it could be a tech company, right? So let me just let her think that. And then he meets the roommate, and when his sister passes out early, of course they do hit it off. And he's super awkward around women because, I feel like Jon Heder is probably really awkward around women. And he's just, like, good at playing that part because he's like, all right, let me channel the real me into this character and go. But he comes up with one last idea. In his exchanges with Maya Erskine's character, Samantha, he realizes that there's something about that idea of love. And he talks to Sheila, and he finds out from Sheila that their first date, Carl and Sheila's first date, was at Winky's World. And she realizes from that story that cheap bastard took me to his parents' bowling alley for our first date. He didn't have to pay for anything. But Jeff realizes that there's a lot of emotion and memory wrapped up in this place. And if I can somehow tap into that, then maybe that's how I'll save this. So he starts hatching a new plan to try and save the place as the end date approaches. Now that is about as far as I can go without giving too much away. So if you want to avoid the spoilers, go ahead and skip down to the time down below. But do it now, because the spoilers are about to start right here. So Jeff hatches a scheme. How can he save this place? And the only way is to recreate that first date feeling. Now, unfortunately, when they had their first date many years before, Winky's was a happening place on a Friday night. It was noisy. There was people bowling. The arcade was busy. The cafeteria was busy. How can he recreate that? Well, he basically throws if you want to come to Winky's, it's the last chance kind of party. There's going to be live music. There's going to be buy one, get one bowling and like pizza and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's actually a really good plan. And it sounds like the kind of thing that a place would really do in order to get customers in. And it starts to work. He starts to take reservations, and there's a ton of people coming. And the good and bad, it's a spoiler section, so I can just tell you. The good and bad is it starts to get your hope up that he's going to save the place. And the spoiler is that he's not going to save the place. On that day, when it arrives, Carl comes in and basically is walking around these investors, and Jeff is giving the tour where, he's subtly showing off terrible things and then in the guise of showing off good things. And then he has Steve Berg's character, who's like the maintenance man around the spot, walked him around, and he's talking about fire code violations and electrical problems, and like he's barely keeping this place together, so it'd be a horrible investment. And of course, we find out that their plan isn't to keep Winky's World, it's to demolish it and use the site to build something. So good thing we're not going to have to worry about any of that. But Carl gets the idea. He knows what Jeff's trying to do, pulls him aside and says, hey, you're a smart guy. I'm going to give you Winky's World game that you can take with you when we close. And whatever happens, whatever my next venture is, I want you to come and be a part of it. And that's why I said it's hard to get a grasp on Carl. Because, again, from the perspective of Jeff and Sheila, he's the bad guy. But I feel like if you weren't from their perspective, if you were really neutral, he wouldn't be that bad of a guy. But Jeff thinks that maybe, just maybe, it's not over yet. If he can just get those feelings wild up in Carl, it'll be good. But I think the thing that Jeff misses, having never been in a relationship before, is that reliving the good memories from a time together doesn't undo all the bad memories. And I'm sure that Carl, every time he walks in that place, just thinks about all the good that's happened, but also that it's a connection to his past, his parents who are now dead, to his wife who is now gone, and he's ready to move on to the next thing. And oftentimes, I don't think that movies take that perspective, and I don't think that we as people take that perspective, that, you know, like, yes, it seems like such a good mission to save this place, but maybe it's better to move on. And I think that that's the overarching message toward the end, that Jeff is ready to move on. When he finds his motivation to save Winky's, he also finds his motivation to go and do the next big thing. And he's the guy who can do the next big, but he just needed something to get him there. And the death of Winky's is what gets him there. And also, finding out that him and his sister have been in a competition that is completely fictional. Because, of course, the story continues with the sister. He has a great conversation with the roommate. Nothing really happens while she's there. She brings the sister to the bowling alley, and the sister reveals, I had no idea you were working at a bowling alley. I thought you were working at a tech company. I have been pushing myself, and I've been pushed by our parents all these years because of a lie. Because you will not tell them the truth and have a quick conversation about what it is you do and what you want. And they basically find out that, like, he kept entrenched in the lie because of how well she was doing. And she kept pushing so hard to compete with the fiction that he was putting together. And you know, I am huge on, like, I don't want to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not interested in the clout chase that everybody seems to want these days. And just that idea of, like, man, I am the one who's driving me. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what anybody's doing. And don't let me be the thing that drives you. Find the thing to drive yourself, because I found that. And I want you to find that too. And I think that's what the takeaway is. Another takeaway, which my sister knows really well, is that Jeff ends up hooking up with the roommate. And this, of course, causes strife with the sister. My sister and I have had a varied past over the last few years. Last few being, you know, our lifetime together. I have, on occasion, dated friends of hers. And it, on occasion, has not gone well. And that, of course, on occasion, has meant that we haven't had a great relationship. So I know that she feels the pain of Jeff's sister in this. But I think that the overarching message at the end is that family is, you know, going to come back together. And my sister and I have a better relationship now than we ever had before. We survived all of those things, including growing up in the same house together, which is probably worse than anything any dating life could have done. And I mentioned El Diablo when I mentioned the characters. Well, underneath all of this is the fact that Stanford, who is working there with Jeff every day, believes that the bowling alley is haunted. And he suggests they go with the haunted angle to try and keep Carl from selling. But, you know, of course, Steve Berg's character is worried that that will make him want to sell, so they don't. And come to find out, the place isn't haunted, but there is an old guy who comes in every day at 10 a.m. and he bowls all day by himself. And basically they let him do it for free. He apparently is paying the fee that was an all-day bowl fee sometime in the 60s or 70s. And Jeff just kind of lets him bowl because he's the only one who comes in every day. And he doesn't bother anybody. And the El Diablo that Stanford hears in the back part of the bowling alley, back where the pin droppers are, is actually El Diablo at night, because not only is he there every day, but he lives in the back, or he's staying in the back anyway. And Jeff finally gets, you know, he's upset about Carl not still selling, he's upset about his sister, he's upset about everything. And he finally is like, you know what, I'm going to go investigate this thing. I'm tired of you guys being scared of the bowling pin machines. So he marches back there, and he hears the guy talking or moaning actually, and he finds the little workshop secret door, and he finds him and he realizes he's sick and he's dying and he needs to get him to a hospital. So they rush him to the hospital, and there he finds that, Winky's world was actually named after Carl's dad, whose nickname was Winky. And this guy bowled with Carl's dad on his bowling team. And a couple of the guys who were on the team went off to Vietnam and didn't come home. So for him, now in his old age, he's stuck on this day where they all met, and he went a little before everyone. And I guess he still thinks that he's going to be meeting all the guys there. And there's this little side story that I think was kind of unnecessary, but where Jeff thinks that this is Winky, that this is the guy who actually owned the place. But, it turns out he tells him, no, Winky was the nickname of this guy, the guy who owned the place. And it turns out that's Carl's dad. And I was just on his bowling team. And, we bowled together, and then a couple of guys went off to Vietnam and didn't come home. And then we just were never the same. And it's just memories that bring me back here every day. I want to relive that part of my youth. And I think that Jeff takes from that, I shouldn't be stuck in this place. So he decides that he's ready to move on too. And he goes to dinner with all the staff, even though he said he wasn't going to come because he wasn't going to give up on this place. And he takes his sister, and they go in, and I think he actually takes the old guy too, I want to say. Yeah. Anyway, so we close out on this very sweet moment of a party and everybody saying goodbye to this place and moving on to the next thing. And there's a cook from the cafeteria who doesn't really talk, but he makes this grand toast and then walks out. It's the first thing he said the whole movie, other than grunts and yes. And so there's a moment there, and then everybody laughs and they go their separate ways. And that's how life is. I've worked at 2 restaurants that have closed while I've been there. Hopefully not anything to do with me. But in the hospitality industry, you make friends, and you make fast friends, you make good friends. But when those restaurants close and everybody kind of scatters to the 4 winds, you do that thing that you always do where you say, we're going to talk, we'll stay in touch, and you never do. But it's a chapter of your life, and you can always think back on it. And I think that that's the piece that Jeff comes to. But we're at the end of the movie, so that's the end of the spoiler section. Let's invite everyone back in, and we'll wrap up this review right now. So, When Jeff Tried to Save the World is not going to be an Oscar contender. It actually came out in 2018, so it would have been already in competition, and it was. It is a really great independent movie. I haven't heard of this director before, so I assume that it's her first movie. I haven't seen Jon Heder in a long time. I'm really glad he got the role because I think he did a fantastic job. Everyone did a fantastic job with their roles. I've seen a lot of his sister and her friends, Samantha and Lindy, because I was recently watching through some of the Pen 15 show, and then I recognized them from this. They are actually part of a comedy troupe as well, which is how they got Pen 15, not this movie. But it's not a movie that's going to be competing for awards, but it is a movie, I think, that we need right now. And, if you watched last week's movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and you really want a palate cleanser, this is the perfect palate cleanser. It is a cute movie. It's a sweet movie. It's a movie that just gives you kind of everything. It gives you the success and the failure, the highs and the lows, the cathartic payoff, and then the anxiety at the same time. And in times that are very uncertain, like they are right now, I think that feel-good movie, and feel-good movies don't have to be happy. That's the thing I think people forget, is that it doesn't have to be a comedy to be feel-good. It doesn't have to have a happy ending to be feel-good. It's just a movie that reminds us of our humanity and our connection with each other. And When Jeff Tries to Save the World is that movie. It reminds us who we are, it reminds us of our connection to people around us, and it reminds us maybe a little bit of who we are. I got a lot of reminders from Jeff of who I am and why I made decisions I made, even if it cost me a lot of money and a lot of time. And maybe feels like I set myself back a lot. There was a reason I made that choice, and I should stand by that reason and continue to move forward. That's the kind of motivation, that's the kind of feeling I want coming out of a movie. And When Jeff Tried to Save the World gives me that. It's all wrapped up in a bow of a very cute story from a couple of people who work at a really nice, a small town, even though it's in a big city, like a small neighborhood bowling alley. So you can't have any more embracing the concept of big concepts on a small stage taking place in a very intimate arena with really good actors doing a really great script and doing it all well. So I think that it really does that, and that's something amazing about that. And again, a good palate cleanser for a super existential movie because everything is very superficial. It's on the surface. There's not a lot to question. Everything's kind of given to you. Now, I think that the interesting part of it is a lot of it's what you take from it. And you could watch this movie and be like, hey, it was entertaining and I feel like I didn't waste my time and, it's sweet, it's a feel-good movie, and that's it. Or maybe you just go to the next level and say, what can I take from this movie? What can I apply to myself? But you don't have to. That's the best thing about this movie. But there's no violence, there's no sex, there is nothing, a little cursing, but like PG-13, kind of like network TV cursing. So it's probably fine. But overall, just a really enjoyable movie. And it's a movie that everyone can enjoy. And again, I think during times like these, it's a movie everyone should enjoy. Just to get that cathartic release, to get that motivation back. When Jeff Tried to Save the World, we'll absolutely do that for you. So I recommend it. If you have a list of movies, it's not going to jump its way to the top. Certainly, you should make sure you see Borat and The Trial of Chicago 7. And there's a lot of things to watch before it. But when you get time, when you have a chance, watch When Jeff Tried to Save the World. Because it's absolutely worth it. In fact, I got a lot of things that are absolutely worth it, including all the videos on this channel. Not just the reviews, but my parody videos, the vlogs. There's a lot of stuff here. Go and check it out. Some of my Twitch recordings. I'm really funny when I'm on Twitch, even though it's kind of by myself most of the time. So check those videos out here. And if that's not enough content for you, I do a daily podcast called Rob Explains. It's about cool, random, and interesting things. Just me sharing knowledge with people, things that I think that people should know. So that comes out daily at Rob Explains on Anchor. It's also available on YouTube, and you can find it anywhere that podcasts are found. You can find Rob Explains at Rob Explains on social media. You can find Everyman Movie Review on social media at the links down below. I'll also put a link in for When Jeff Tried to Save the World, so you can watch it on streaming. And as I've said the last couple episodes, I'm taking a little bit of a vacation. Gotta go home. Gonna visit my family, get recharged and renewed. But the episodes will not stop. 2 episodes a week, every single week. That's my guarantee to you. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you have notifications turned on so you don't miss an episode. But until the next episode, please take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great week.